This is Russell Dobular sitting in for Jimmy, who's performing in El Paso, Texas tonight, joined by Keaton Weiss. Now, it is funny, Keaton, you brought up earlier, okay, you will not meet anybody this side of the most hardcore Marxist who hates universities more than Keaton does. Keaton really hates the whole institution of higher education. So it's funny that you brought up earlier that maybe this will help to steer kids more into useful lines of work, vocations, because that's exactly what they're doing, Keaton. It's what I always say, man. Keaton is a thought leader. He's a thought leader. You know, he kind of sets the agenda for Gen Z. Many in Gen Z ditch colleges for trade schools. Meet the tool belt generation. Cy Kirby dreaded the thought of going to college after graduating from high school. He says a 4-year degree just wasn't in the cards for him or his bank account. Quote, I was facing a lot of pressure for a guy that knew for a fact that he wasn't going to college. I knew I wasn't going to sit in a classroom, especially since I knew I wasn't going to pay for it. Instead, at the age of 19, Kirby took a job at a local water department in southern Arkansas. He said the position helped him to develop the skills that helped him start his own construction company. Now, at age 32, Kirby finds himself mentoring many of his employees who also opted to learn a skilled trade rather than shelling out tens of thousands of dollars to pursue a degree that they wouldn't use after graduating. Kirby says blue-collar work is lucrative and allows him to call the shots in his life. But he says the job also comes with a downside, mainly because of the stigma attached to the industry. I think there's a big problem with moms and dads coming home from quote-unquote dirty jobs, coming home with dirty clothes and sweating. You had a hard day's work, and sometimes that's looked down upon. Kirby is among the growing number of young people who have chosen to swap college for vocational schools that offer paid on-the-job training. Lisa Countryman Quiros is the CEO of JVS, or Jewish Vocational Service, a nonprofit in San Francisco that provides career training for unemployed workers to find jobs, including in skilled trades. She says that over the years, there's been a shift, with skilled trade making a comeback, especially among members of Generation Z. Quote, folks have really prioritized a college education as a path to the middle class and a path to a cushy office job. But over the last 10 to 15 years, we're seeing a trend among young people opting out of universities. Just the crushing debt of college is becoming a barrier in and of itself. More than half of Gen Zers say it's possible to get a well-paying job with only a high school diploma, provided one acquires other skills. That's according to a survey by New America, a Washington think tank that focuses on a range of public policy issues, including technology, education, and the economy. In addition, the Education Data Initiative says the average cost of college in the United States has more than doubled in the 21st century. So here's a chart showing you if tuition had gone up at the rate of inflation and what it actually is. Now, having a foot in both worlds, I grew up in a blue-collar neighborhood where this is exactly what you did. You got an apprenticeship, you became an electrician, you became a carpenter. Yeah, I mean, I've always known that. The people I grew up with who went into building trades, they have a lot more money than the people I went to college with. They all own their houses. They had a lot of them own second houses. They have nice cars. Yeah, this idea that going to college is the only way to ascend to the middle class or the upper class. Yeah, it's total bullshit. And what that kid was saying was right, or what that guy, is a man now, what he was saying was right. It's the stigma. It's the stigma. So you have the impression that working some kind of white collar job in an office pays more. No, it doesn't. Not as a rule, not unless you're really in the upper echelons of the organization. It's higher status because, as he says, you don't come home sweating. So there's this idea that you're a professional.
And even in the instances where it does pay more, it doesn't pay more enough shall we say, to compensate for all that debt you incurred to get that job, right? Like even if you are making a little more, look at the hole you dug yourself in to be able to get this job, to the point where even if it does pay a little bit more than a job you could have gotten by going to one of these vocational schools, look at the situation you put yourself in to get that job. The math just doesn't work out. I mean, these PMCs aren't crushing it either now, you know? You got households making six figures who struggle to get the bills paid because of the mortgage or the rent or whatever the hell it is, and the car payments and this and that. You know, like even these white collar jobs now are not necessarily, as a rule, a path to like short term financial security. Like I know a lot of people who went to school and got jobs that are very well respected and that pay okay, who still have a hard time because housing is a fortune, right? The interest on their debt that they, that they took out to get that 4-year degree is a fortune. The car bill is a fortune. Childcare is a fortune, right? Like everything is a fortune. And so you have to earn so much to compensate for that. The difference between what an entry-level white-collar job pays and what you could make as an electrician, it ain't worth it. It ain't worth it in so many cases.
I have a friend, because they started an initiative in New York to get more women in the building trades. She has a master's in education. She's an apprentice electrician now.
Right.
You become an electrician, making a lot more money than she made doing that. You become an electrician, a union electrician, you make bank doing that. And also, so many of these jobs are less satisfying than vocational work. I would rather be a carpenter any day of the week than sit in an office. Like, how many people really enjoy that way of life? How satisfying is it? Like, to me, if you're going to do that, why wouldn't you go into the vocations? You're probably going to get paid more, and it's more satisfying.
The one perk of an office job is that you can watch shows like this while you work. You can watch the Jimmy Dore show on the job. You can watch the Do Dissident show on the job. You can't do that while you're building a house.
You hear that, folks? Don't quit your office jobs. We need the audience.
We need the live stream engagement.
With that price tag increasing, meaning college, many Gen Zers say they've been left with no choice but to leave the college path. Many say living with their parents until they can pay off their college debt isn't an option. Nitsan Pellman is founder of Climb Higher, a company that helps low-income and overlooked people break into new careers. She says pursuing skilled trades can help level the playing field, especially for young people from less privileged backgrounds and for people of color. You know what? I just read, because I'm going to the Dissident Dialogues, he's going to be one of the panelists. John McWhorter's book, that was one of his suggestions, because he spends the book tearing down intersectionality, essentially, in the premises of woke racism, as he calls it. And he says at the end of the book, okay, so people are going to say, what's your suggestion? And that was one of his suggestions, to encourage more vocational training in the neighborhoods of people of color as an economic stepping stone to the middle class and higher.
Just so you know, not to ruin the love fest here, but he just published a banger of an op-ed in the New York Times called "I'm a Columbia Professor. The protests on my campus are not justice." So he's another piece of it. You want to ask him about
and it's the same thing with Coleman Hughes, where he was right on that issue, but he shocked Joe Rogan with his virulent Zionism. So I don't know what it is with these guys with that. I have to read that op-ed now. Maybe we'll do a piece on it. We don't see a lot of black men in construction, but more Latino men in construction, and you don't see many women in construction. Social capital is a really big gatekeeper and a door opener for accessing high-quality jobs and helping people break into certain industries, she says. The high cost of college isn't the only factor driving many young people towards skilled trades. With the use of artificial intelligence on the rise, many Gen Zers see manual labor as less vulnerable to the emerging technology than white-collar alternatives. They also say vocational schools are a straight path to well-paying jobs. They're absolutely right. They're absolutely right. Where they can use an AI, they're going to use an AI. And as special as you might feel, most of these office workers, an AI can do your job. Pellman says increasing salaries and new technologies in fields such as welding, plumbing, and machine tooling are giving trade professions a facelift, making them more appealing to the younger crowd. Quote, there are a lot of vocational jobs out there that are pretty attractive. HVAC repair and installation, electricians, solar panel installer. There's so much demand for wind turbine installers who in many cases make more than $100,000 a year. So there's a lot of demand for manual labor, she stresses. That was the case for 25-year-old Diego Aguilar, who says a traditional desk job was out of the question for him. Aguilar now works full-time at a trade center at East Bay Municipal Utility District in Oakland, California, after going through the JVS training program. Quote, when I went into a trade program, I learned how much money I could make performing a very specific kind of work. You need mechanics, you need machinists, you need carpenters, operators, you need painters. You can expect to get your hands dirty, and that's okay. Data from the National Student Clearinghouse Research Center shows the number of students enrolled in vocational-focused community colleges increased 16% from 2022 to 2023. As for Kirby, he says his mission is to keep raising awareness about what he calls the tool belt generation. Quote, where they can walk out of the school of hard knocks, pick an industry, work your 10 years, take your punches, take your licks, and hopefully you're bringing jobs and careers back to the community, he says. When asked if he regrets his decision to go into skilled trades, Kirby chuckles, not for a second, he says. And here you go, what Keaton was just saying. More than half of recent four-year college grads are underemployed. A new report found that many recent graduates don't land jobs that require a degree. So yes, my esteemed colleague has made this point many times. Yeah, college is kind of a scam. It's kind of a scam. You know, very often you're not going to get a job out of it, or the job you get, you're going to hate, or you're not going to actually be making as much money as you will in a vocation. And now the cost of college is outrageous, and the AIs are coming for your job. Yeah, man, maybe they'll eventually invent robots that can do carpentry. It's gonna be a long time. It's gonna be a long time before you have robots that can measure and build something. For me, when I first got out of college, I did some temp jobs. I hated working in an office so much. That's how I wound up driving a horse and carriage. I was a horse and carriage driver on and off for 11 years because I preferred the freedom. I preferred to work with my hands than to sit in an office. I think you got a lot of people who would prefer that, but they've been told that white collar work is higher status. That's a big part of it. They think it's higher status because that's how society frames it. Keaton?
Yeah, I mean that's all it is, and it is not the path to any sort of enlightenment. Do college students act like enlightened people? Do enlightened people? I'm not going to use any words that'll trip any censors on back in YouTube when it clips this, but there's a certain R word that we try not to use because we're not supposed to. But is it enlightened behavior to fill plastic cups with piss beer, throw a ping pong ball into them, and then drink it? And that's the behavior of people who are pursuing some sort of transcendent enlightenment? No, it's the behavior of a cult that wants to indoctrinate you into behaving like a selfish, shallow douchebag, which is what college actually generates. Those are the people who go in, those are the people who come out. That's all I got to say about that.
I actually felt when I was in college that most of the people there had no reason to be there. I really felt that way.
Yeah.
Because they weren't interested. Like to me, coming off the street, I was like a kid in a candy shop. Wow, I could take classes on ancient civilizations. I could take classes on linguistics. I was so excited about it. Because for me, I didn't assume that I was going to go to college. That was not part of my class, to just assume you're going to go do it. So for most of the people I was in school with, they took it for granted. And it was an obligation. It wasn't an opportunity to them. And you could see that they really didn't get very much out of it. You know, they were just checking boxes on the way to whatever career they were going to do. And I honestly felt like it degraded the level of education that might be possible at a university, because they had to teach down to a population that mostly did not need to be in a university. Most of them are not that smart.
Like what you're talking about, I mean, there's a lot of variation because it depends a lot on who's teaching the course and how invested they are in it. Like I took an acting course my freshman year of college, which was one of only 2 years I spent there. That was fantastic. Like the teacher, she was amazing. And it was a really great course that gave me a lot of insight, not just into acting, but you know, you learn Shakespeare while you're there, because the best way to learn Shakespeare is to actually act it, not just to read it like in an English class, right? So like, yes, there are, you know, examples of college classes and college professors. I had another course that I took that was great, but for every one of those, there's like 3 or 4 where like the TA teaches the class and you get nothing out of it. I took an art history class, and the exams for art history where you would sit in the lecture hall and he would show a painting and you had to just remember who painted it and what the title of it was. Right? That's it. You didn't have to know anything about it. You didn't have to know any of the meaning behind the work. It was just like basically a giant like flashcard show. Well, and that's how we would.
Yeah. I mean, that's because
that's bullshit. We would study that in a group, my friends and I. And not only did you have to write the painter and the painting, you had to spell it exactly right, or else you didn't get any points. So you got to spell some Italian guy's name from 500 years ago exactly right, or with the accents where they have to be, or else you don't get the credit. Like, that's not education. That is masturbation. Yeah, for how many thousands of dollars a year? For what job requires you to know that? You know, I mean, so much of it is just an absolute crock of bullshit. And I think it's a great thing. One of the silver linings of these past 6 months is that I think more people have woken up to that.
Hey, come see us do a live show in El Paso, Texas, San Antonio, Denver, Colorado, Los Angeles, California, May 19th at the Zephyr Theater. That's a panel show with video. Ashland, Virginia, Athens, Georgia, Rutherford, New Jersey, Minneapolis, Ontario, California, Irvine, California. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.